Okay, this is the quick review, subtracting mixed numbers. I'm not going to do it the way the book does it. The way that I'm going to do it is to change them into improper fractions first. If you change them into improper fractions, you don't have to borrow at all. Because remember, when you're subtracting, one of the issues that you come across when you're subtracting any number is the fact of having to borrow or ending up with negative numbers. But if you change them to improper fractions first, you never have to borrow. So let's change this one first into improper fraction. Remember, it's this and then plus. So it's this and then go around here. So Texas popcorn, 5 times 4 plus 1. So 5 times 4 is 20 plus 1, 21, and then the denominator always stays the same. I'm going to write it horizontally, so 21/4 minus 3 times 1 is 3 plus 2, 5 over 3. Now you have to make a common denominator. Anytime you add or subtract fractions, you have to have a common denominator. To make a common denominator, I could just take this number and multiply it to both of these fractions. Matthew C. calls this the rule of 4. And then you can take this number and multiply it to this one. Whatever you do the denominator, you have to do the numerator. You have to do it to both of them. Okay, so multiplying my new fractions, when you multiply it straight across, 3 times 21, that would be 60. 63 over 3 times 4, 12, minus 5 times 4, 20 over 3 times 4, 12. So now do you see how this number is bigger than that number? So you never have to borrow. So when you add or subtract fractions, you just add or subtract the numerator and the denominator stays the same. So 63 minus 20 would be 43 over 12. The denominator stays the same. You only add or subtract the numerator. And then turn that back into a mixed number. Look to see if that can reduce, but that can't reduce. And then turn this back into a mixed number. The most 12 goes into 43, I think, is 3. 3 times 12, 36. 7. And so then this is your new remainder. Your remainder is your new numerator. And then your denominator always stays the same. So 3 and 7 twelfths or 43 twelfths. They should be the same thing. Okay, now let's look at 14D, number 16. It is 7.5 miles to Sarah's house. The distance to Michelle's house is 3 2/3 miles less than, that's a key word, than the distance to Sarah's house. How far is it to Michelle's house? Michelle's house is a certain number of miles less than Sarah's. So sometimes you need to forget the numbers and just look at what they're asking to know what operation you're doing. If Michelle's house is a certain number of miles less than Sarah's, then it means we take the distance to Sarah's and then subtract off Michelle's, and then we can find out how far it is to Michelle's house. So we can take Sarah's distance and subtract off Michelle's, and that will tell us how far it is to Michelle's house. So I like to do fractions horizontally, and I'm going to always do it by changing to improper fractions because then I never have to borrow. Okay? So, improper fraction. 2 times 7 is 14, plus 1, 15, and then the denominator always stays the same. 3 times 3 is 9, plus 2, 11 over 3. So now you make a common denominator. To make a common denominator, you take this denominator and multiply it to both the numerator and denominator of the first one. Now take this one and multiply it to the numerator and denominator of the second one. Then multiplying fractions, you multiply straight across. 3 times 5, or 15, 3 times 15, 45 over 3 times 2, 6. 11 times 2, 22, 3 times 2, 6. Now that you have a common denominator, you only add or subtract the numerator. 45 minus 22 should be 23, and the denominator always stays the same. So 23/6 is an answer in improper fraction, but we need to change it into a mixed number. So 6 into 23. 6 goes into 23 the most 3 times. 3 times 6, 18. Subtract these. So that becomes your new numerator, and the denominator always stays the same. I have a denominator of 6 here, I have a denominator of 6 here. So 3 and 5, 6 miles is a word problem, so you need to have that miles to say what that represents.